My name is Mrs. Emma Oliver, and I'm the band director at Kingsley and Elmwood Elementary Schools in Naperville 203. And I am so excited to introduce you to a friend of mine. Today we're going to be talking with Mr. Jeffrey Spenner. Mr. Spenner and I actually attended undergrad together. So we went to the University of Illinois. We were students in the School of Music together. We had lots of classes together and played in band together. And now I am a beginning band director, and Mr. Spenner has a really cool job. And I'll let you tell him, or I'll let him tell you a little bit more about it. So, Mr. Spenner, if you could talk a little bit about what your position is, what your title is, and what we should call you. Go ahead.
Yep, so I'm Chief Warrant Officer Jeff Spenner. I'm the Assistant Director of the United States Coast Guard Band. The Coast Guard Band is the musical representative of the United States Coast Guard, one of our 5 branches of military, and also the musical representative of the Department of Homeland Security, under which the Coast Guard falls. My rank is Chief Warrant Officer. That's what militarily I am. But the band calls me Mr. Spenner, just like all your students call you Mrs. Oliver, and call teachers Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, as the case may be. So yeah, that's the proper military way of addressing me, is as Mr. Spenner. I still prefer Jeff, personally, but I am in the military, so that such things come with that.
I think a lot of my students might not really know about this, but musicians are a really important part of our nation's armed forces. And so with Veterans Day coming up, I wanted to teach them a little bit about service bands. So I don't really know a lot about this either. How many service bands are there, and how are they set up?
So I actually don't know the entire number, because it's a larger number than you might think. So the armed forces, there are 6 branches of the armed forces. There's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and now Space Force. Um, and each of the branches, except for Space Force, has at least one band. There is only one band to the Coast Guard, so this is it. I am I'm with the band. But each of the other branches have at least several. So each branch, again, excluding the Space Force, has a premier band. So we are the premier band, obviously, of the Coast Guard. The Army has the premier band in Washington, D.C. That's Pershing's own Army band. Also in Washington, D.C. is the premier band of the Navy, the Navy band. The President's own Marine Band is based there as well, and the Air Force Band is there as well. Now, all of those branches, the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, also have other ensembles. So, for example, I spent about 5 years in the Army Band program before I came over to the Coast Guard. So I was in a band in Missouri called the 399th Army Band at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. And that was one of, I want to say, 37 or 38 Army bands spread around the country. And there are also a couple, there are a couple in Europe, and there's one in South Korea, there's one in Japan. And then, as a part of the National Guard and the Army Reserves, which are a part of the Army, each state has at least 1 or 2 part-time military ensembles. So when you put together all of the active duty, full-time military ensembles, plus the part-time reserve or National Guard ensembles, I think you have something like 120 or so military bands in the country. So there's a lot of opportunity to serve your country through music, if that's something that people are interested in doing.
Wow. And we should say Mr. Spenner's instrument before he started conducting as part of service band is.
I call myself a reformed trumpet player. I don't really play much anymore, but yes, when Mrs. Oliver and I knew each other back in undergrad, I was a starry-eyed trumpet player.
Fantastic. So, what is the role of these service bands? Why do we have service bands? What kind of functions are you performing at? What is your mission and role in our nation's military? What role do you serve?
So the primary mission of any of the service bands is to tell the story of their branch. So for me, that's the Coast Guard, to tell the story of the Coast Guard and the men and women who make up the Coast Guard, as well as tell the story of our nation. And what that means for us is through concerts and through education programs and through any of our initiatives, what we're striving to do is at a very high musical level, tell the story of all of these people. So it may be the story of Douglas Monroe, who was a Coast Guard hero during World War II, and to make sure that people don't forget the heroism that he showed. You know, the story of how Alexander Hamilton started what is now considered the Coast Guard when he, through the Department of the Treasury, started the Revenue Cutter Service. So there's a lot of looking back. There's a lot of telling the history, telling the traditions of our service and our country. But there's also a lot of looking at the present and the future, telling the story of how, like, today, if it were like any other day, the men and women of the United States Coast Guard saved 9 lives. Words to that effect start most of our concerts when we're on tour. So the band does a national tour every year. Um, and this, not this past year because of COVID, but my first year in the band, we actually toured through my home state of Michigan and into Wisconsin and down into Illinois a little bit. And every concert starts with this piece where I serve as a narrator. And the first few lines are, today, if it were like any other day, the women and men of the United States Coast Guard saved 9 lives. The Coast Guard performed 35 search and rescue cases, responded to 45 oil spills. The Coast Guard kept 837 pounds of cocaine off the streets of America. And so it's to tell the story of all the different missions that the Coast Guard has. And you can transpose that to any of the other services. So the Army bands are telling the story of the Army. The Navy band is telling the story of the Navy, Marines, Air Force, eventually Space Force if they get a band. So we tell those stories, but at the same time, it's also to, you know, foster patriotic feelings in the women and men of the country. We do a lot of patriotic events. We do a lot of, you know, remembering and honoring events like Independence Day, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. And it, you know, music has such an ability to touch people in ways that other even art forms can't. You know, music is a way of expressing so many different emotions, and in many ways emotions that can't really be articulated or expressed through words. So we're able to perform concerts, we're able to play for a variety of audiences, whether that audience, you know, that audience member is a veteran or the spouse of a veteran or the family of someone who has been killed in action or lost, is a prisoner of war. We're able to offer comfort, we're able to offer remembrance, we're able to offer pride in our country. No matter where you fall, no matter who you are in this country, we're able to represent you and represent who it is that you are and who you are to the fabric of our nation.
Thank you so much for your service and for providing that for us. I know I, as a musician, feel that very deeply. I do want to rewind for just a moment because you said the H word, which is Hamilton. Have you done anything in connection with the musical Hamilton or made that connection with the Coast Guard? How are you telling the story of Alexander Hamilton and his connection with the Coast Guard? Have you had an opportunity to do that at all?
So what I can say is that the Coast Guard Band has been around for 95 years. So in 5 years, we'll be celebrating our centenary. And a half-baked pie-in-the-sky idea that I have is related to the musical Hamilton, and that's all I will say on that. With also the teaser, there hasn't been any movement on this really outside the planning phase, but Lin-Manuel Miranda, who who created the musical Hamilton and performed the title role for a long time, he's actually an alum of a Connecticut college, just down the street, really. So I'm hopeful that there can be maybe some room for collaboration there. But no, so Alexander Hamilton was the founder of what we would consider the Coast Guard. He founded what was called the Revenue Cutter Service in 1790. And that was a fleet of ships that were to protect commerce, to protect the economic well-being of the very young country at that time. And so that continues to be one of our missions today, is to protect ships and ports that are really crucial to us as a nation economically. And so every day I walk by Hamilton Hall at the United States Coast Guard Academy. There's a giant statue of Hamilton out front. So Alexander Hamilton is very, very important to the history of the Coast Guard. In fact, I forget what piece it is in Hamilton, but the character Alexander Hamilton in the musical makes reference to the Coast Guard. So, you know, we are very proud of being able to call that founding father in particular truly our founding father.
And have a shout out in the most popular musical in the world right now.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt our public relations either.
So in a typical year, you would be doing all sorts of concerts, touring, public outreach. Obviously, you're not immune to the pandemic in your operations within the Coast Guard Band. What are you doing during COVID as an ensemble, and how are you still managing to carry out your mission and connect with people right now?
So we, like so many others, and really the rest of the world, back in mid-March, mid to late March, we had to navigate the pandemic by essentially going completely virtual, going online. And where we had the ability to do so beforehand. Most of our concerts had been live streamed before, and you know, we had YouTube, we had Facebook, we had all of these online platforms. You know, like you mentioned, and as one might expect, our entire job is to get out there in front of the public, get in front of people, get in front of people to tell the story of the Coast Guard, to tell the story of our nation. And yeah, it's incredibly difficult when the circumstances don't allow us to do that job, to complete that mission. So what we have been doing is a lot of recording projects and a lot of you know, making music in whatever ways that we can and posting them online. So when we started to be allowed to get together at, you know, with 12-foot spacing, with 12 feet in between each of our members, you know, we started doing what were referred to as the parking lot sessions. So we set up a full concert band in our parking lot because we couldn't be inside. We didn't have the space inside to do that. And so on our YouTube channel, you can actually see some recording, and on our Facebook especially, you can see recordings of us just out in our parking lot playing music. And since then, we've been able to start moving inside in small capacities. We're doing smaller ensembles, chamber ensembles, brass quintets, clarinet quartet has been very active. And still maintaining the 12-foot spacing, still maintaining when you're not playing, you're wearing a mask. We have a fairly strict 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off policy where we're rehearsing or performing for 30 minutes and then we clear the room so that the air conditioning and the HVAC system can recycle the air for 30 minutes. So I mean, we're taking incredible steps to ensure the safety and health of our members while still being able to fulfill our mission of getting the message out there, performing for people. And I'm very proud to say that since March, we have reached over 3 million people via all of our platforms. And one of the other things that I should mention that your colleagues and your students might be interested in is that education and outreach is such a crucial part of what we do, and those areas fall directly under my position. And so what we have been doing is we've been doing virtual masterclasses like this, what we're doing today, but also where some of our members live in person over Zoom or over whatever platform provide educational classes for teachers and their students. And maybe someone wants to teach their beginning trumpet class how to how to buzz warm-ups or things like that. And so our members have performed, I think, over 200 virtual master classes for students across 17 states and 3 countries, I think. So we've reached, I think, over 10,000 students just through that initiative. So, we're keeping busy and we're doing what we can, but always through the lens of keeping our members safe, keeping them healthy, and still being able to fulfill our mission. And that is, again, to keep the music going, to keep providing that musical outlet, providing that content for the American people.
So speaking again to that mission, we do have Veterans Day coming up. Right now it's Saturday the 7th, and Veterans Day is this Wednesday, November 11th. What plans does the Coast Guard have to commemorate Veterans Day in this unusual year?
So this year, our clarinet quartet is going to present a concert on the 11th. So it'll be broadcast on our Facebook channel, also on live stream, and I think it will be archived afterwards and probably go up on our YouTube. Under normal circumstances, we would be giving a concert, or we would be doing a ceremony. For even this year, up until about a month ago, there had been tentative plans for us to move forward with one of the normal events that happen on Veterans Day, and that was we were going to take the band down to Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia, which is right outside Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. And there's a beautiful amphitheater there. We were going to partner with the Army Band Chorus and present a nice concert there. I think it was going to be broadcast on CNN. But obviously, just like all other organizations, we and the planners of that event have to be very cognizant and very aware of the environment and aware of what is going on. So in deference to the health and safety of everyone involved, and just the feasibility, it was decided that better not to do an in-person event this year, and that was completely with the health and safety not only of the members but of any prospective attendees in mind. But military bands all over the country will be found doing anything from parades to concerts to this year especially putting things up on YouTube. And Veterans Day is one of those holidays, national holidays, that mean so much to so many different people, and especially to those of us in uniform, being able to provide music and provide that sort of pride in service that our veterans all carry with them. I mean, it's so wonderful looking out into the audience, seeing all the veterans in their veterans caps, no matter if it's a Veterans Day service, Memorial Day service, or just one of our normal concerts. I mean, we under normal circumstances give monthly concerts here at the Academy, and then run out concerts, and like I mentioned, our national tour. And it's just so touching to see so many veterans and to hear their stories afterwards. And one of our favorite parts of any of our concerts that we do is the Armed Forces Medley, and that's where we play the service song of each of the branches of service. And we invite those who either are currently serving or have served to stand and be recognized during the particular song. So we'll play the Army song, and anyone who's serving or has served in the Army will stand up. And then the Navy Anchors Away will be played, and the Navy veterans will stand up. And it's always, you know, the pride in which that they stand, and just the amount of love that they have for their service and their country is just really, really humbling to see and to be a small part of.
I wonder, Mr. Spenner, if you have just an individual story of a veteran who shared just how touched they were by a performance. If you have something that happened to you, or you were able to connect with someone in the audience and really have a treasured memory of that. Do you have any stories like that?
Oh, I could I could go on for hours about stories. I mean, my own grandfather was an Army veteran, and I have his a couple of his Army jackets, actually, his uniform, and his basic training duffel bag I use as my laundry bag at work. And he wasn't a musician, but he loved music, and he actually gave me my first trumpet. And when he passed away, I played at his funeral. I played taps. But more recently, when we were on tour in the Great Lakes region, so now not this past summer, but 2 summers ago, we were, oh gosh, where were we? I think we were in Wisconsin. And at intermission, we got word that in the audience was a Coast Guard veteran, a World War II Coast Guard veteran, who had served in a Coast Guard band after World War II. And he was, I'm going to get this wrong, but I think he was 101 years old. And so I had the opportunity to talk with him afterwards. And I mean, just the amount of love that he had for the Coast Guard. And so he served in the Coast Guard in World War II, in the Pacific, I think. He was in the Pacific Theater. And after the war, he got into one of the Coast Guard bands, where at the time there wasn't just the one Coast Guard band. There were, I think, 3 or 4. And so he got into the band in state of Washington, I think. And just, he was able to tell me so many stories. He remembered exactly who he played with and when, and, you know, just, you know, we had such a wonderful conversation about the music that we had just played for him on the program. And, you know, he offered me a couple pointers, and he offered me his criticisms, but no, he was just such a sweet man. And, you know, to think about this man and the experiences that he's had, and to see him and interact with him after our concert, I mean, it was so incredibly touching. And, you know, we found out that he was there at intermission. And so as a part of my Master of Ceremonies role for that concert, I got on the microphone, and, you know, I think we had a good 5-minute standing ovation for the guy when I announced that he was even in the audience, so that the audience was just so appreciative of his service too, that, you know, and he, you know, he's certainly special, I think, but I don't think that he's unique in that sort of sentiment. You know, at any concert, at any of our events, there are any number of people who could just so easily have been spotlighted like him. We performed at the Coast Guard Festival in Grand Haven, Michigan, 2 summers ago on tour, and that's this huge festival that's just, you know, yay, go Coast Guard for like a whole week. And it's so incredible playing for the people that we represent. I mean, there are times where our mission takes us to, you know, middle of nowhere, landlocked state, where people may have heard of the Coast Guard, but they don't really know what it is that we do. They don't know who we are. You know, having grown up in Michigan, I mean, you guys in Illinois, you have a Great Lake right there. So, you know, the Coast Guard is a little bit more of a presence than, say, in Kansas or Oklahoma or Iowa or places like that. And so sometimes we we have the privilege of introducing people to the Coast Guard. Here's who we are, here's what we do. But other times, we have the privilege of playing for our own people. And it's not better, it's not worse, it's just a very different sort of dynamic. And it's, I'm so proud to be able to play for both sorts of audiences.
And I want to take a second to comment on something you said, which is that it's just such a privilege to connect with people through music. And, my students right now haven't had an occasion to perform, but I want to just take a second to encourage any musician out there right now to think about who your people are. And if there's a way you can share a musical performance to uplift them in this difficult time, whether it's a veteran for Veterans Day, whether it's grandma or grandpa who can't accept visitors right now, think to yourself, you have something to offer as a musician. Even if you're in fourth or fifth grade, there's someone out there who would be touched to hear your musical gift. And I think right now, Mr. Spenner and I would both agree that the world needs that right now. And that's something that we all have that we can offer as musicians, that's truly, truly special and unique. Well, Mr. Spenner, it has been such an honor to talk with you and such a pleasure to reconnect. I wonder if, wrapping up, if you have any advice for a young musician who might aspire to do the kind of work that you do, to play as a professional musician in one of the service bands. What advice do you have for our young musicians as they're just getting started on their musical journey?
So I'll start by saying that, if if we would have talked when we were back at University of Illinois, like we did on so many occasions, I don't think that I would have ever foreseen going into the military as a musician. I don't imagine any of you would have imagined me in the military. But there are so many different opportunities out there to have music be a huge part of your life, whether it's being a performer in a major symphony or any symphony, whether it's the Chicago Symphony or the Elgin Symphony or even a community orchestra, or if you want to be in a military band, or just or teaching or being an administrator. I mean, there are so many different ways of being a musician in this world. To do that, however, it takes a huge amount of dedication, and it takes a huge amount of work, really, to get anywhere in music. And I don't think that's unique to music either. I think that in any field, to really truly be great, you have to put in a lot of work. And I don't think that talent is enough. Talent without tenacity doesn't work. Passion without practice doesn't work. You have to be dedicated enough. Like, I'm not the most talented person in the world. I'm not the best conductor in the world, but I think I've gotten to wherever it is that I am because I'm willing to put the work in that needs to be done. So for anyone who may aspire to any sort of musical position, whether it be a service band or an orchestra or anything really, a soloist, I think you have to be willing to put the work in, and you have to be willing to think about things in not necessarily the right notes, right rhythms, right dynamics sort of mindset, but what are you saying musically? What are you communicating through your music? The most successful musicians that I know, I mean, it's a given that they're going to play right notes and rhythms. I mean, when we hear an audition for the band, it's assumed that you're going to play the right notes and rhythms. Beyond that, it's what are you saying? what are you trying to communicate through the music? And that's something that's so hard because we can't really we can't tell you how to do that, right? It has to be something that comes from within you. And I think part of it is taking risks. It's taking musical risks. I think that, I want to try it this way. And maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. And what I want to encourage your students especially is don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of playing that wrong note or playing that wrong rhythm, because mistakes are how we learn. And I think the worst thing that we can possibly do is use our mistakes as a reason to give up. I just personally, I have been rejected from well over 150 jobs. I have far more rejections than I have acceptances that I've received. And I like to think of each of those rejections as, as terrible as they were to get at the time, they were a stepping stone to where I am right now. And you learn from the mistakes that you make. You learn, and it can, maybe it's not even a mistake. It's oh well, that didn't go as well as I thought, or how can I improve that? Because music is so subjective anyway. It's you know you hear two different performances of the same piece, and maybe all the notes and rhythms are in the right place, but one says one thing and one says another, and who's to say really what's right and what's wrong? But the best musicians I know that are out there are finding their musical voice. And whether they're classical musicians, whether they're popular musicians, folk musicians, rock, whoever they are, the ones that I tend to listen to, and I think the ones that people as a whole tend to listen to, are the ones who have something special to say, that they aren't just one of many. And so for your students, I mean, obviously practice, practice, practice. But through your practice, don't just be thinking about the notes and rhythms. Don't just be thinking of, I need to play an A sharp here. I need to be playing a dotted rhythm here. It's, what am I trying to communicate through this music? What adjective does this music have? Is this happy? Is this frustrated? Is this prideful? Am I boasting about something with this music? Am I expressing love through this music? Because music is a language, and music is a way that we bear our souls to the world without having to say a word. And really, even at the beginning level, you can already start doing that simply by deciding, I'm going to play this angrily now. Pick a scale and decide, like, play a B flat major scale, and decide to play it angry. And what does that sound like? And do that same scale right after, and tell your mother you love her through that scale. Or tell your cat to stop jumping on the dog. Like, pick a story to tell and tell it through your music. And sometimes it'll happen, sometimes it won't. But I think the joy in music making is the discovery of how to tell these stories. It's what I love about being a conductor. It's what I love about being a musician, because I get to decide how this music is supposed to sound. I get to decide, who is the story am I telling? What is the story that I'm telling? And maybe it'll be different this time than it will be last time. Maybe I'll play this piece of music in such a different way that I tell a completely different story, and that's fine. And that's what makes music so wonderful, is the ability to really express myself and express the feelings on behalf of others through the printed page.
Well, Mr. Spenner, thank you so much for having this conversation with us today. I'll be sure to link some resources so that people can hear the Coast Guard Band and see some of the great work that you're doing. And thank you for your service. Thank you for the conversation today.
Oh, thank you. It's been great.